Okay, let's unpack this. We've landed ourselves in a pretty fascinating intersection, haven't we? Ancient spirituality meets cutting-edge neuroscience.
It really is quite something.
Today, we're embarking on one of our, well, maybe more complex deep dives yet. We're analyzing source material that blends profound spiritual teachings, specifically teachings from the 1810-2025 Murli. That's like a daily instruction set for a specific spiritual path. And, comparing that to modern neuroscientific research.
That's absolutely right. And our goal isn't just philosophy, is it? Our mission is really to extract the scientific mechanism, the how behind these concepts.
Yeah, how does it actually work in the brain?
Exactly. If spiritual growth is real, how does the brain change? The core hypothesis here, which is strikingly modern, is that this spiritual journey is essentially an intensive course in neurohealing and, well, intentional directed neuroplasticity.
I love that framing. Spiritual practice as targeted neuroplasticity. And the foundation of the whole teaching, from the source material anyway, seems simple but radical. Shifting your identity. Moving from the small, limited ego to the expansive, eternal self.
And this is where the terminology becomes key, isn't it? The source makes this really profound distinction between two states. The Abhiman, which they call body consciousness, and Atmahaman, or soul consciousness.
And the spiritual point is, well, pretty non-negotiable in the text. The teaching says you must become Atmapamani, which means recognizing, truly feeling, I am a soul, I am a point of light energy, distinct from this physical body.
Okay, so from a brain perspective, what's really striking is the effect this identity shift seems to have on the brain's, let's say, background operations.
You mean the constant chatter?
Sort of. We're talking about the default mode network, the DMN.
Yeah.
You can think of the DMN as your brain's constant background app. It's always running.
Okay.
Its job is typically, constructing and maintaining your self-image, your story, your ego processing memories, worrying about the future, comparing yourself, all that internal stuff.
Right, the me, myself, and I network. So if that's handling the ego story, then the act of defining yourself as a soul separate from the body, that must quieten it down.
Precisely. It seems to be a deliberate deactivation, or at least a quieting, of the DMN's self-referential loop. And this calm state isn't just a feeling, it's measurable.
How so?
Well, when the DMN activity decreases in this way, you often see an increase in certain brain waves, specifically alpha and theta waves.
Okay, alpha and theta. What does that mean practically?
These wave patterns are scientifically correlated with deep states of inner peace, increased clarity, and importantly, better emotional self-regulation.
But the teaching doesn't just paint the rosy picture, does it? It also warns about staying stuck in the ego state. It says De'abiman leads to becoming Misamaj.
The samaj, yeah. Which translates roughly to unintelligent or maybe lacking understanding.
Right, lacking clarity.
And that's a perfect spiritual term for what neuroscience might call cognitive hijacking. When you're stuck in that ego-driven state, the brain tends to overactivate the amygdala.
The fear center.
Exactly, the primal fear and fight-or-flight center. You become reactive, maybe irrational, and find it harder to process information logically.
So it's the opposite of being clear-headed under pressure.
You got it. Soul consciousness, Atmihaman, seems to do the reverse. It appears to strengthen the connection to the prefrontal cortex.
The thinking part of the brain.
That's the one. Responsible for executive function, logical thought, impulse control, balanced decision-making. So the spiritual choice between ego and soul. It's almost like a neuroscientific trade-off between activating the fear center versus the executive control center.
Wow, okay. That sets the stage beautifully for the second major topic from the source. And here's where it gets really interesting, I think.
Okay.
The teaching talks about the drama and the law of rebirth, this philosophical idea that every actor, every soul, has a fixed time to arrive and play their unique part in this whole world cycle.
Right. And if we connect that concept to the bigger picture, scientifically speaking, it does resonate with certain fundamental laws in physics.
Like what?
We'll think about energy conservation or cyclic laws. The teaching defines the soul as a form of energy that's never destroyed. It just changes bodies, changes forms.
Okay.
Which, aligns conceptually with ideas like the conservation of energy or even laws related to entropy and renewal in systems.
So the source is kind of treating the universe like a closed energy system, and the soul is the indestructible energy unit moving within it.
In a sense, yes. And crucially, the teaching says that energy unit, the soul, has a unique fixed frequency, a specific part to play. And if you accept that, it sort of eliminates mental friction. If you truly accept that your path, your role, even your challenges, are fixed parts of this eternal drama.
You stop fighting reality.
Exactly. You stop wasting energy resisting what is.
Okay, but this raises a really practical question for anyone listening. Why should this big metaphysical theory actually matter to my daily anxiety or stress?
That's the key application, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because the awareness, the acceptance, that every soul has a unique predetermined role. It can theoretically neutralize the emotional toxins.
Like comparison.
Jealousy, precisely. Comparison, jealousy, competitive fear. If you truly believe your timeline is perfect for you, and mine is perfect for me, then those primary drivers of mental stress, they just start to dissolve.
That sounds like a powerful route to emotional stability.
It is. And science has a name for this kind of shift. Cognitive reframing.
Okay.
By consciously choosing to view a stressful situation, maybe an argument, a setback, a failure, as simply a required scene in your part within the larger trauma.
You're changing how you label it.
You are. And doing that activates the prefrontal cortex we mentioned earlier. It helps dampen the emotional reactivity from the amygdala. It creates what the teachings call a stable mind. It's essentially a cognitive technique for building psychological resilience.
So we can quiet the ego's network and we can reframe our reality, but what about actual physical healing? That brings us to the main intervention tool in the source material, yog, meditation.
Right. Focus meditation.
And the teaching makes this, frankly, astonishing claim that this focused remembrance leads to being nirji healthy, disease-free, for potentially 21 future births.
That's a huge claim.
It implies some kind of sustained, fundamental cellular repair, doesn't it?
It does. And this claim, well, this is where modern science offers some genuinely powerful, though maybe not that extensive, support. Meditation, especially the type described as Raja Yoga, which involves concentration on light or the supreme soul, it has demonstrable physical effects.
Such as?
Research shows it can impact telomere length.
Okay, remind us telomeres. Why are they important?
Telomeres are like the protective caps on the ends of your DNA strands. Think of the plastic tips on shoelaces.
Got it.
They shorten each time a cell divides, and chronic stress accelerates that shortening process that's linked to physical aging. So Raja Yoga, by reducing stress hormones like cortisol,
It slows down the shortening.
it seems to help preserve telomere length, yes, offering a degree of DNA protection, potentially slowing aspects of cellular aging. It suggests a way to actively buffer stress damage at a very deep cellular level.
Wow. And beyond the DNA level, what about the immediate chemistry? What happens in the body during this meditation?
Well, focusing the mind in that specific way seems to trigger a release of beneficial neurochemicals. We see potential increases in oxytocin, maybe endorphins.
The feel-good hormones or healing hormones?
Both, really. Natural healing and bonding hormones. The source calls this receiving a spiritual current that heals subtle sand scars.
Sand scars, those deep-seated tendencies or habits, right? Often subconscious.
Exactly. So the idea is that this practice initiates a kind of purification process powered by self-generated positive brain chemistry.
Okay, but the spiritual path is also realistic. It highlights a major hurdle, kamvikar, lust, or perhaps more broadly, addiction.
Yes, that's identified as a primary obstacle.
So how does a practice based on quiet concentration tackle something as biologically driven and, frankly, compulsive as addiction?
This is where the concept of dopamine mastery comes in. And it's critical. We know from modern science that lust, craving, intense desire, they hijack the brain's reward system.
The dopamine circuit.
Right. It's the relentless pursuit of, let's call it, low-hanging pleasure, an intense but very fleeting dopamine hit. This leads to tolerance, needing more for the same effect, dependence, and often a loss of control.
That immediate, intense rush. But it often leaves you feeling emptier afterwards, doesn't it?
That's often the pattern. Raja Yoga teaches dopamine regulation by instructing the mind to shift its focus entirely, to aim for a higher pleasure.
Which is?
The sustained experience of divine love, or Paramatma Prem as the source called it. The idea is when you genuinely connect with this higher, more stable sense of bliss or peace, the craving energy that was previously directed towards lower addictive sources gets fundamentally converted or redirected. It's channeled into this sustained divine connection.
It sounds almost like spiritual alchemy, transforming lead into gold, but internally.
It really is described that way. You are, in theory, literally rewiring your brain, moving away from dependence on that rapid, fleeting reward circuit.
And building new pathways instead.
Exactly. Building new neural pathways dedicated to a more sustained, high-level sense of satisfaction and peace. It's a prime example of using targeted neuroplasticity to counter addictive patterns.
That sounds like a complete internal restructuring. It must require consistent effort, though.
Absolutely. Which brings us neatly to the final, crucial piece of the mechanism described in the source.
The chart.
The daily chart, yes. The teaching stresses keeping this detailed self-check. So scientifically, what's happening when you sit down and, truthfully quantify your mental activity for the day?
Good question. What is happening?
Well, the act of doing that daily chart actively engages the brain's metacognition network.
Metacognition, thinking about thinking.
Precisely. It's the ability to observe your own thought patterns. Rather than just being swept along by them, you're turning your attention inward, becoming the impartial observer of your own mind. You're essentially measuring the gap between the soul state and the ego state throughout your day.
So the chart isn't just a diary, it's a tool that forces awareness. It turns unconscious habits and reactions into conscious data points you have to look at.
Exactly right. And this consistent daily observation actively builds new neural pathways. By documenting, okay, when did body consciousness flare up today? When did I manage to maintain soul consciousness? You are engaging in high-level directed neuroplasticity.
Wow.
The instruction to write the chart is almost like, scientifically speaking, telling your brain, review your current operating system daily, identify the bugs, the ego reactions, and actively start writing the code for version 2.0, the soul conscious version.
Okay, this synthesizes beautifully into the practical application, the actionable steps, the Dharna points for the listener.
Yes, the source outlines a very consistent sort of three-part daily strategy. First, the morning Amrit Vela, the early hours.
What do you do then?
Just a few minutes, maybe 5 minutes, of deep breathing and focused intention, affirming, I am a soul. I am a child of the supreme light. It's like preemptively activating that soul circuit before the day's chaos begins.
Okay, priming the pump. Then second, daytime interventions.
Right. When irritation, anxiety, or the ego flares up, when the amygdala tries to hijack the system, you deploy a cognitive interrupt.
A mental stop sign.
Sort of. You repeat the mantra, the affirmation. I am D-high, meaning I am the soul, not the D, the body. I radiate peace. You consciously pull yourself back to that observer state.
And finally, the evening self-check. The chart.
Exactly. This is the neuroplasticity workshop session. Writing the chart, quantifying the wins and the slip-ups, you're tracking your adherence to the new mental architecture you're trying to build, measuring how consistently you manage to live as the observer, the soul, not just the reactive actor, the ego.
And the ultimate transformation promised in the text is being victorious in the Dharma Yud, the spiritual struggle, but through practical, everyday life. This only works if you actually do it, though, right? Consistency is key.
Oh, absolutely. The victory, as described, is achieved to what we might call neuroscientific consistency. Knowledge alone is pretty useless if it stays theoretical.
Right.
It has to become applied action for neural embodiment to occur. Only when you consistently practice living from that new identity does the brain gradually stop defaulting to the old, comfortable, but often problematic ego pathways.
Makes sense. And for those seeking the deepest level of healing, the teaching offers this evocative instruction. Go to the bottom of the ocean, Sagar Keteo. What's that about?
That phrase, it's a beautiful metaphor, isn't it? It's really a call, I think, for entering the profound theta brainwave state during meditation.
Theta, again, why is that state so important?
Theta is often associated with that twilight state between waking and slipping. It's where the conscious mind's chatter tends to step aside and the subconscious becomes highly receptive, more accessible.
So it's for deeper work.
That's the idea.
Yeah.
It's considered the state where those deep foundational sanskars, the root tendencies, can be accessed and healed, and where the soul's inherent, often buried powers, clarity, peace, love, bliss, are revealed and experienced more directly.
So, to sort of wrap up our journey today, the entire process detailed in these spiritual sources, the identity shift, the specific meditation, the daily self-monitoring, it's actually a remarkably structured method.
It really is.
A method for awakening true self-consciousness and, quite literally, systematically reprogramming your brain with divine light.
It's a cycle, isn't it?
Right.
Insight leads to intervention, which requires intentional repetition. Meditation physically rewires the brain. Soul awareness activates those internal peace circuits. Divine remembrance, or focusing on that higher connection, heals the subtle psychological patterns. And practicing that awareness daily, using the chart, builds this new, what the source implies is a divine neuroplasticity.
And the final slogan from the source material really brings it all together perfectly, I think. And the mind's confusions. Shanen, which sounds like overthinking circuits to me, through remembrance of the Supreme Soul.
A powerful summary.
So here's a final thought for you, the listener, to ponder. If true self-awareness involves this kind of consistent observation, what's maybe the single biggest lie your own default mode network, your ego narrator, tells you almost every day? And is that something you need to put on your mental chart this week, something to explore?